Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to the Enrique's Journey Writing Lab. And I'm joined by Mr. Short today, who's at the Kern Learn East location. Um, and one of the things that I'm going to have a little bit of problems with is that if I try, well, let me try something here. How many people are in this meet? Mr. Short, can you see the count on how many people are in the meet?
7.
7. Okay, good. I got room. So let me turn off these things, and this way I can see the chat box at the same time if anybody needs to chat, and I can see who's here with me. So, alrighty. Okay, so we are actually at the point in the module for 3.4.5. And
Excuse me,
yeah,
Mrs. Campbell. Hey, Isaac, could you turn off your camera, please? Thank you.
thank you. We're at the point at 3.4.5, so to make sure that you don't miss out on any deductions on the first draft in the peer review, you can go ahead and make a Google Doc that says Writing Lab on it and submit that for every assignment up through 3.4.5. And that way, we will be talking about some of the information that is in those activities. And then later, you can go back and complete them and having a little bit more information about them. So let's go ahead and just start with a basic general impression. What did you think of the message in the book?
Um,
Did you like it or not? And you can be honest. If you tell me you didn't like the book, there's no way I can ding you on that for a grade, so don't worry about that.
I felt like there could have been a lot more she could have put in there, and a lot of different ways she could have gone about it to explain what was going on
Mm-hmm.
in it. And I want to know how she was able to go and do that trip without helping all the kids she can.
Right.
If I would have been doing that, I wouldn't have been able to just do it and not help any of the kids.
Right. Well, keep this in mind because you notice on the front how it says, well, maybe, I don't know if it does. I have a sticker on the front of mine. Does yours say the young adult adaptation on the front cover?
Yeah.
Adapted for young people. Yeah. Sonia Nazario wrote the book actually before it was a book. It was a series of newspaper editorial, kind of an expose that she wrote in a series for the Los Angeles Times. And once she discovered the whole story, then she sent all of them to a publisher and they put it together in a book. Now, I will tell you that so that could be considered the adult version of it, and that is now in a book form. But I can tell you that they just slapped together a bunch of news stories. It's very repetitive, but there is some more information in it that does describe, obviously there are too many people for her to help. And actually, she retraced Enrique's steps. So she wasn't literally following him. She interviewed him, and then she went through all of the places. She tried to duplicate that journey, and that's how she was able to learn what she did. But and yes, it would be nice to be able to help them all, but as a as a reporter for the Los Angeles Times, especially in this day and age, I'm not sure she had a lot of money. The newspaper would have been paying for all the things that she needed to do in order to get through this trip. So,
Mhm.
um, but if you want to know more about actually what she went through, I know that you can find this and that's actually the version that's in audible.com. And as you listen to it, you'll realize, oh, you know what? Our version was better. So, um, but yeah, it is. How can we help the kids who are out there? That's a really good question. Anybody else want to comment on what they thought of the book?
I feel like it really changed the way I think about illegal immigration
How so?
because, um, well, I used to be, I don't know, kind of against it, thinking that it's like putting our country in danger or whatnot.
Hmm.
But hearing about the stories of these immigrants and like the hardships that they are coming from really made me like open my eyes to what it's
Yeah,
like.
and that
Hmm.
was Nazario's purpose, wasn't it? Um,
Hmm.
People do, especially I still hear it today. Those immigrants, they're just here to take our jobs and our health care and like that, and they don't understand. I how many of you have wanted to leave the country? You just think, I have got to get out of this country, I can't live here anymore. Have any of you felt that at any time?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to. I mean, it's hard when you figure if you go to another country, what all do you have to do?
That's true.
You have to learn another language. You have to find work. You have to, and hopefully you're educated. But if you're not educated, then what do you do? And so it's not an easy decision to make. And I think there's a lot of people uh, who live here who've never been in a circumstance where they're basically fleeing for the welfare of their families. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it does give you the perspective that you need.
Hmm.
Anybody else have a comment? Any questions that you may still have about it? So Riley had mentioned earlier about the, why did Nazario at any point try to help? Is there any way she could have helped? Do any of you have any other questions that you're still not sure? Well, I don't get that. Nope. Okay. All right, well, let's look at the discussion questions that are in the Socratic seminar discussion board so we can talk about those. Enrique and Lourdes disagree about the impact of immigration on the United States. Enrique says that were he an American citizen, he would want to restrict illegal immigration. Like most on his paint crew, he explains, he gets paid cash under the table, which is to say he does not contribute taxes on what he earns. He uses publicly provided services, including emergency medical care, and he sends a portion of his income to Honduras rather than spending it in his community. Lourdes disagrees. To her, immigrant labor is the engine that helps drive the American economy. Immigrants like her, she says, work hard at jobs no American wants to do, at least not for minimum wage, providing goods and services to all Americans at reasonable prices. So, with whom do you agree more and why?
Oh, for me, I don't have um a stronger pull towards either. I'm more in the middle because both um both people opinions are both slightly in a way right,
Mm-hmm.
but they aren't considering the other part of them. Like, I know there's a lot of people that come to better their family, but I
Mm-hmm.
also know there's people that come that will just live off of all the free stuff they can get from the government.
Can you kind of figure out what would be different about Lourdes and Enrique that would make them be opposite in their opinions? What do you think is the difference between them here?
One of them had to is actually is an immigrant, and the other one, so they know how it is to move like them, how pretty much how they think and how they help or worsen. They themselves can help or worsen the things around them, and with them being in that position, they are able to understand more of what's going on than someone who was born and raised in America, because they have not really been suggested or around that. They've never seen it, witnessed it, probably never really been around someone who openly talks about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus the fact that, Lourdes is the mom and Enrique is the son. And I think that unless you have your own children, I don't think you can quite understand what uh, Lourdes was going through. Mr. Short, are you with us?
Yes.
And I know you have your own children. And as a father, um, how do you think that would impact you if you knew that you would have to leave in order to support your children? You knew that you stood a chance of better supporting your children. Is that a decision you'd even consider?
Wow, that's a tough question, but I think I can answer it by saying I can understand what Lourdes is going through, and I understand why she does what she does.
Yeah, because I've never had children myself, but I can only imagine that if you're seeing your children going hungry, they're only eating um, once a day, maybe if they're lucky, and they're crying at night, and your heart is breaking for that. I mean, that has to be what is propelling you to make that kind of a decision. So yeah, Riley, I agree. There's a little bit of truth to each one of them, um, but what a hard decision it is to kind of figure that out. Anybody else want to respond to this? Who they think they agree with more, Lourdes or Enrique? By the way, I don't know why the presentation is. Are you seeing the presentation okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not.
Mhm.
I've got both my computer on and my Surface Pro, and I can't see on my computer what my Surface Pro is showing. So I just want to make sure you can see it, and that's all that matters. Okay. Okay, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So, how does the issue of immigration impact the various stakeholders listed below? So, there's a lot of different people that you have to consider who are impacted here. The first is the immigrant parents themselves. So, knowing what you know about the immigration dilemma, how do you think that impacts parents?
I feel like it would impact them like in the way that they have to be away from their child for so long and not really knowing like when they can come back, especially with the little money that they are making to not only provide for themselves but for their children and their other country that they're from.
Right.
So that's what I think about it.
It's scary, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
have any of you ever visited outside the country?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it, are they countries that speak other languages other than English?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So how did that work out? I mean, what just going there because you want to? Um, is there a certain anxiety there, or what's it like?
Feel homesick.
hmm
A lot of people stare at you.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when we see tourists here,
hmm
we do to wow, how many there? Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So those are bad enough when you want to go, but when you have to go, how uncomfortable that must make you feel.
Pretty
And
uncomfortable.
What about the children of the immigrants? Now, there's two different situations, especially going on now. Um, have you seen in the news in the last couple of years how the children are being separated at the border from their parents?
Mm.
yeah,
Do you know why that's happening?
No.
Yeah, not really. I don't really know why it's happening.
Well,
they're doing
go ahead, Riley. Or
they're
yeah.
doing I feel like they're doing that because doing that, and if there's something happens and the parents can't go, or the police or the border patrol find something that or need to question like the parents, they can use um their kids as like a bargaining thing to let the kids go in, or what, like help use the kids to help them figure out what's actually going on.
Well, there might be an element to that, but the thing is, what's the law if how do we know you're a citizen? What's the first criteria if you are a citizen if you were what?
Born in the United States.
Born in the United States. Now, so there are immigrants who come and who have children here. They're illegal, but because the children are born here, they are not. So the only people who are being sent back are the ones who are the illegals, but the children still remain U.S. citizens. So what's going on here is that you're separating the parents from the children because the parents are not citizens.
Yeah.
So looking at that, so we got two different situations here. We've got the children not being allowed to go back with their parents to other countries, and then we've got the children left behind in those countries trying to find their parents. So what would be the impact either way?
I think a parent like leaving their kid to go to another country, they can feel like unloved or unwanted, like Enrique did.
Definitely.
Well, I feel like if I was a child whose parent wasn't there with me, I'd feel so scared I wouldn't know what to do.
Right. And especially when you look at how young these children are. So the Washington Post says that this year, we know that 2,700 children are known to have been separated from their parents last year.
Wow.
And
Oh,
the majority of them were under 12 years old. And more than 200 of them were under 5 years old.
Oh my goodness.
So when you think of that, how is that going to impact? Let's look at both age groups. So 5 years old, we know the impact that it had on Enrique because that's the age that Lourdes left. Right, he was 5 when she left. And do you remember, well, based on what she said in the book, what is Enrique losing out on? Why does, in fact, there's going to be a question that comes up later. Why does Belky seem to handle this better than Enrique?
Because she's younger and she doesn't really know what's going on.
It's actually the opposite. She's the older. She's 2 years
Oh, she
older.
is? My bad.
That's okay. That's okay. It's a good thing we straightened it out. She's 7 when Lourdes leaves, and then so I don't know if you can remember when you were 5 and 7, but how do you think the differences would be? I mean, what kind of, can you remember between 5 and 7? Do you remember what things that were happening when you were 5 versus what was happening when you were 7?
Oh my gosh, I feel like they're the same age.
Yeah, me too.
Really?
Yeah, like I feel like that was just like 5 and 7. I was basically the same age. I don't really know.
Okay, let's ask our parent expert, Mr. Short. Can you kind of describe the difference between a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old?
Yeah, I don't know. 5-year-olds are like kindergartners, and 7-year-olds are like in what, like second grade.
Second grade, yeah.
And it's all a big fog to me, so I don't. I don't know.
You go to work every day and let mom take care of them, right?
That's right.
But I'm sure your children were perfect angels anyway. So,
Oh well, thank you. That's not too far from the truth, but there were we've had times.
right. Well, and that's the thing. In fact, if you look at the opening now, it's past the prologue, but look at the opening of chapter 1. How does Nazario open that chapter?
The boy does not understand.
Exactly. And I think that kind of sets the whole theme up. At 5 years old, he cannot understand why his mother leaves him. And that is what's going to shape the rest of his life. Now, has he made some bad decisions? Absolutely. But because it's at this point in his life, he doesn't have that full understanding. Everything is in the now. And that's all he understands. So what he knows now is that his mother is leaving. So, okay. Since we've kind of ventured into the book now, let's take a look. What we want to do is find evidence, and this is a good time for us to kind of brainstorm in the book, finding some significant evidence and page numbers, so that when you do get into the writing, you'll know where to find the evidence. So let's take a look at the first bullet. Why does Lourdes feel justified in leaving her family? See where you can find that in the book. Where would be the best place to look for this?
Chapter 1.
Exactly, because this is where she leaves him behind. Mommy. How old is that little one?
Oh, he's 3.
I was going to put him on the speaker there so we could interview the 5-year-old. He was 5. Okay, tell him that his mommy has left him and is never coming back. See what? No, don't do that. I know. I don't really mean that. That's no.
Now.
I heard something. On aha. What'd you find?
Are we on page 20 on the bottom?
Mm-hmm.
It says Lourdes has decided she will leave. She will go back to the United States and make money and send it home.
Great. Go ahead and finish the rest of that chapter. Or chapter, no. Don't do the Can you do the rest of the paragraph, please?
She will be gone for 1 year, less with any luck, and come back to Honduras, or she will bring her children north to be with her. It is for them she is leaving, she tells herself, but she still feels overpowered by guilt.
Great. Make sure you take note of 2021. And there's also, take a look at the paragraph that's just in front of that paragraph on 20, the one that starts, Lourdes can think of only one place that offers hope. As a 7-year-old child, now here's what's interesting. There's a lot of information packed in this paragraph. As a 7-year-old child, she glimpsed this place on other people's television screens when she would deliver her mother's homemade tortillas to wealthy homes. On television, she saw New York City's spectacular skyline, Las Vegas's shimmering lights, Disneyland's Magic Castle. The flickering images were a far cry from Lourdes' childhood home, a 2-room shack made of wooden slats with a flimsy tin roof. The bathroom was a clump of bushes outside. Now that packs a real punch there, so let's see if we can find out what significant information we can get out of this paragraph about why she would feel justified leaving her family and why the decision may not have been a good one. What do you think? What are some things that we can assume about this?
Well, she only saw like the, I guess, glamorous side of the U.S. Like she only saw like the sugar-coated version. She never saw like how hard she was gonna have to work to actually be like in the United States and make money. She just saw like the sugar-coated version.
Excellent. And when you look at your own life, do you have the sugar-coated version? Which one of us lives the kind of life that is depicted on television?
What are you doing? I'm on a video chat with my class.
Go ahead and mute it if you want. Yeah. Just break on in when you need to. Okay. The fun part of online education. Home life. Okay, so yeah, this is, I don't think any one of us has this kind of lifestyle, because if we look at the population of the U.S., what percentage of that population actually lives that lifestyle?
A very small percentage.
Mm-hmm. And in fact, have you heard people talking about being the 1% versus the 99%? Have you heard that?
No.
No?
I've heard of the term.
It has. Go ahead.
I've heard of the term, but I've never heard anyone saying that they're the 1%.
Right. Because the 1% usually doesn't like to admit it in public because it's almost bragging. But what the 1% is, that the 1% holds the greatest amount of wealth in the United States, whereas it's the 99% that are all living, struggling, trying to make ends meet. Not necessarily that they're living in poverty, but that they're not rich either. And so what she is seeing, now remember, how old is she when she's seeing this?
She's 7.
She's 7, and so that's a very impressionable age, and it's real close to where the age that Enrique is going to be. But now that she's an adult, that the original sight that she had as a child, she now, as an adult, thinks that she has the capability of going and achieving that. Now, where does she learn about this glamorous lifestyle?
On other people's televisions.
Which people specifically?
Wealthy people's television.
Wealthy people. So she's first, she has to go to the rich people's house where she lives in order to find what this even better lifestyle is all about. So you can kind of see how this builds this idea in her head that if she goes to the United States and there's plenty of wealth to go around there, she just needs to send a little bit of it home. So these are really important pages when you're looking at Lourdes's motivation and was it reasonable? It's kind of like somebody should have told her, snap out of it. That's not what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so go ahead. Somebody had an addition there? Okay, so why wasn't Enrique satisfied with staying with his grandmother? Let's see if we can find the evidence that responds to that. Have you found the section yet? What section are you looking in?
I'm looking in Grandmother Maria, but I don't know if that's where it is.
Okay, it's not going to be directly there. So there's not so these questions that I have here, they're not necessarily answered immediately. The first one was yes, but I will tell you that this one is not.
There's a passage on page 31
Okay.
towards the bottom. It says, for Enrique, each telephone call grows more strained. Their talk is clipped and anxious. This is a telephone call between him and his mom.
Mm-hmm.
When are you coming home? Enrique asks. Lourdes avoids answering his question directly. Instead, she promises they will be together again very soon. Then, for the first time, something occurs to him. If she will not come home, maybe he can go to her. Neither he nor his mother realizes it yet, but this kernel of an idea will take root.
Good. Yeah. So and that's I remember what the grandmother keeps saying. What does the grandmother keep telling Enrique?
That she'll be back soon.
Exactly. Now, of course, that's Lourdes is saying the same exact thing, and the grandmother's trying to be encouraging, and she believes that Lourdes will be back soon. And I get the feeling that if the grandmother's the one that constantly says she'll be back soon, and the mom doesn't come back, there's got to be some resentment being built up to the grandmother there.
Yeah.
Plus, is the grandmother the one that he originally started to stay with?
No.
Who
No.
did he originally stay with?
His
father.
dad.
And why doesn't he stay with his father?
Because he found another wife.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least a girlfriend. And,
Well, yeah.
And then they, so yeah, it's going to be three's a crowd when it comes to that. And so that's why the dad leaves him with, and I believe it is the paternal grandmother. So Luis's mother, Enrique's father's mother. So she's less of a connection to the mother than, say, if Lourdes's mother were raising him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and so we've got a couple of different things going on there. That she continues to promise that that Lourdes will come home, and she doesn't. And at the same time, so she said, well, Grandma keeps telling me this, it's not going to happen. I'm going to go see her instead. So, okay, so why do you think Belky was more accepting of her mother's abandonment? Where can we find some evidence that gives us that answer? I'll give you a hint. You don't have to go too far from where we were. When we were looking at Grandmother Maria.
This isn't actually like what we're looking for, but I just wanted to say that I found on page 32 towards the top, it says, "Come home, Lourdes's own mother begs her on the telephone." So I guess the grandmother is actually Lourdes's mother, not Louise.
Oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I hate to give out bad information. I wasn't quite sure at that point. Very good. And that's definitely at the point at which, obviously, the grandmother herself knows. Look, this kid is suffering because you keep telling him you're coming home, and I keep confirming that, and he's not taking this well. So thank you for clarifying that. If you take a look at 24, I think we can probably figure out why Belky is a little bit more understanding. There's a specific reason, and then there's kind of an implied reason.
Oh, I think I found it.
Okay.
Is it in the middle?
Mm-hmm. Read what you found.
She should thank her mother for leaving. Without the money Lourdes sends for books and uniforms, Belky could not even attend school.
Mm-hmm. She realizes this.
Yeah.
Now, can you figure out how old Belky is at this point when she realizes it? I think you might have to go back a page to kind of figure that out.
She's 9?
Right. Very good. Do the math for us, please, Taylor.
Oh, okay. So at the beginning, it's page 23. It says confusion, and it says it is 2 years since Lourdes has left. Enrique is 7, and the difference between their ages is 2 years. So I just added 2 to 7.
There you go. That's the math. That's what I wanted. Okay. So at this point, at 9 years old, Belky must have a little bit more maturity if she's able to think of this, right? Because does this sound like something a 7-year-old could figure out?
Probably not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think as you're getting into 9 and 10, you start to have a little bit more awareness of the people around you. And so I think that's part of the big issue, is that he does it from the time he's 5. He's not going to understand. And I don't think he ever does. I think that when he reaches 9, he doesn't have this understanding. Instead, what does he do?
He goes and gets her.
Mm-hmm. He's accepting the poverty. He's going around and doing he gets into the so the sniffing of the glue and everything like that, because he never really matures the way that Belky does. Okay, so what benefits did Belky and Enrique have as a direct result of Lourdes's leaving them?
They were able to go to school longer than they would if she would have stayed
Right?
and have nicer stuff than they
Right.
would have.
Do you remember some of the stuff she sent to them?
She sent them shoes and school supplies,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe she sent some toys
Right.
and stuff like that home.
Exactly. And at one point, I think she even sends Enrique a television. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So she's trying to. I think she's trying to make up her absence with the kind of things that she sends home. Yes, it's things they need, but it's also some things that would, especially the television. You know, I just thought, man, that's kind of ironic because that's how she discovers the US is such a wonderful place to go and be. So she sends him the television because she associates that with wealth. And yet what does he do with it?
Use it on drugs.
Yeah, he sells it, uses the money for drugs. So very sad. It's a very sad situation. Now, let's see if we can find some evidence about what the children actually lost when their mother left. So we know what they gained, but what did they lose?
Is it too obvious to say a mother figure? Well, I mean, they had their grandmother for until their dad left, but that's not I guess it is kind of the same thing as having a mom, but it's not like your mom.
Right? Can we find the evidence in there that will indicate? I mean, yes, we know that we all have the common knowledge, but is it confirmed in the book?
I don't know.
Where is it?
Maybe they felt like they weren't being loved.
Can you find evidence of that? Where do we have that indication?
I found it. I found it. I just
okay.
found exactly what he asked for.
Okay, where are you?
I'm at the bottom of 24.
Okay, go ahead.
It says, Aunt Rosa Amalia thinks the separation has caused Belky and Enrique deep emotional problems. To her, it seems that they each struggle with an unavoidable question: how can I be worth anything if my own mother left me?
Perfect. There you go. So yes, the answer is yes about the mother figure. Your confirmation is there, and so now what I want you to practice doing is tying this together for the reader. Answer the question if you can. Why would somebody think that based on, you know, they've gone away for good reasons, but why would they believe that they aren't worth anything?
Because they were too young to understand that their mother was leaving in benefit for them.
Mm-hmm. But why would they feel that they're not worth anything if their mother isn't there?
Because their dad isn't there. Also,
Well,
like they don't really have like an actual parent.
They don't have an actual parent, right? What else?
Because there isn't no complete constant in telling them that they're worth something.
Perfect.
There
That was
isn't
really well
because
stated. They don't have that kind. Now, I'm sure that the grandmother tried. I'm sure that the aunt tried, but it's not coming from the parents. And you know, I told the other group, I said, I feel bad enough when I have to leave my 2 dogs with somebody because my husband and I have gone on a trip. I feel terrible. I feel like I'm abandoning my children because I haven't had my own children. So if they really were the, you know, if you do leave children behind, it almost makes them feel like they're pets. You don't want me to go with you. Why don't you want me to go with you? Aren't I valuable enough to take this journey with you? So that this is a question that I think is a really important one, and especially when you look at what your topic is going to be about, you may want to keep this in mind and think about it. if your parents abandon you for good reasons, if this it had to happen this way, how would you feel though about not having them with you? And there are some people now who are in that circumstance. So, okay, describe the guilt Lourdes feels when she leaves her children.
Well, this isn't exactly the answer to what the question is, but I think it could act as kind of like an additional answer to maybe bolster the right answer wherever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I
that's
don't know
on
if there's
page.
any right answer anywhere.
Okay. All right. Well, on page 28,
Mm-hmm.
it's after Lourdes unintentionally gets pregnant.
Yeah.
And then down towards the bottom of the page, it says, alone, Lourdes leaves the hospital wearing nothing more than a blue paper robe. Then it says she sits in her apartment kitchen and sobs, longing for her two children back home, her mother, her sister, anyone familiar. Her homesickness is unbearable.
Oh, that is powerful. And we did talk about homesickness earlier. Um, how do you define homesickness? This is a concept that I think all of us are familiar with, but let's define it. How do we describe that? Have you ever felt homesick before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so describe it. What is it that makes you homesick?
Like being in an uncomfortable environment.
Yeah, just being like anxious sometimes makes me homesick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a longing to be around or somewhere where you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And with
I
people
think,
you're familiar with. Go ahead, Mr. Short.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, what makes me homesick isn't so much the physical structure of my house as it is the people who live there, just missing them.
Right. And the routines that you have and the relationships you have and the fact that you take sometimes I think we do take for granted that people are there, and it's not until that we've been without them that we realize, hey, they were a really important part of our life, and now they're not here. So that's one way. So she's homesick for sure. And then guilt itself. Now, the one answer that came up earlier. So I'm not saying this is the right answer. This is one. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's if you got impressions from the book, what you're wanting to do is find out where those impressions come from, because it only comes from what you've already read, and then you kind of connect to what you've read. If we look at when Lourdes actually leaves, so look at page 21. Okay, actually, let's go ahead and pick up the paragraph from the bottom of 20. Lourdes has decided she will leave. She will go to the United States and make money and send it home. She will be gone for 1 year, less with any luck, and come back to Honduras, or she will bring her children north to be with her. It is for them she is leaving, she tells herself, but still she feels overpowered by guilt. Lourdes will have to split up her children. None of her family members can afford to take them both on. Belkey will be left with Lourdes' mother and sisters. Enrique will be left with his father Luis, who has been separated from Lourdes for 3 years. Lourdes kneels and kisses Belkey, hugging her tightly, but she cannot face Enrique. He will remember only one thing that she says to him: don't forget to go to church this afternoon. It is January 29th, 1989. His mother steps off the porch. She walks away. Donde está mi mami? Enrique cries over and over that night. Where is my mom? What does she do? Or what doesn't she do?
She doesn't go back to Honduras.
Well, yeah, we should know that, but I mean, right there and then, when she is about to leave, what doesn't she do?
She doesn't give Enrique the attention she usually does when she leaves.
Right.
Or
There's
when they
no
leave.
goodbye. There's no goodbye. She can't face him. Now it's interesting. Why is it she can kiss Belky goodbye, but not Enrique?
Because Enrique
Because
is the
Enrique's
youngest.
younger and he doesn't understand more what's going on.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's also a lot more clingy and desperate to be around her.
Yeah. So she can't even hear it. And I have a feeling, I don't know if she actually hears Donde está mi mami. I don't think she hears that. If she's walked away already, she wouldn't have. So, and it says she never does return to Central America. So,
Yeah.
um, that's hard. That's just a heartbreaking thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we have talked about Aunt Rosa and what she said. What page was that on again?
24.
24. Thank you. So I hope everybody's writing these page numbers down.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
Perfect. Or sticking little stickies in there would be good too. Okay, what does Enrique expect from his mother once he has found her? Where can we find that answer?
A bit farther back.
Way farther back, great.
Yeah.
In fact, Nazario helps us because she titles the chapter that helps us with that.
There's a slight indication as to what he hopes to get from his mom on page 48 at the
Okay.
very top. The first complete sentence up there, he has to go find his mother. She is his salvation.
Mm-hmm. Wow. What does that even mean? So, what does he need to be saved from?
I think from his own feelings of worthlessness, because he feels like he was abandoned by his mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that because he thinks he was abandoned by his mother because he's worthless.
Yeah.
Or maybe I feel like he may be like wanting to like stray away from his addiction, maybe.
I think that's true too. Yeah.
Even though when he got back, well, when he went to the US, he still like ended up doing the same thing again. But I don't think that was his intention in the beginning.
Right. Okay, so let's find out when he gets there. So, what
Okay.
chapter does he get back there? When do they reconcile?
I think it's like 195 or something. I just looked in the contents, so.
Right. I think we can find it a little earlier than that.
Okay.
The unexpected reunions or the girl he left behind, that's a little bit after. But look at chapter 8. What's the title on that one?
Perhaps new.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this new life. Let's see what happens when they meet. Where do we see that? Anybody on page 163?
Oh, just now.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Last paragraph, right?
Right. children like Enrique dream that when they finally find their mothers, they will live happily ever after. For weeks, months even, the mothers and children hold on to a fairy tale idea of how they should feel toward one another. Then their true feelings surface. The children say they resent having been left behind. They accuse their mothers of lying to them when they promise to quickly come back to their home countries or send for them. Now that the children are in the United States, their mothers are working hard and don't have time to make up for all the attention they missed out on while they were apart. Worse, jealousies grow when the children have to split their mother's attention with children she had in the United States. So it's basically like the honeymoon is over. This is a lot like marriage, by the way. That's kind of what happens. There's a honeymoon stage and then reality sets in, and you have to be able to kind of work through that. So, and that's really a problem, especially what are the circumstances that Enrique comes into? What is Lourdes's life like when he comes there?
Well, what strikes me is on page 165,
Mm-hmm.
second to last paragraph. But in time, Lourdes and Enrique discover they hardly know each other.
Right.
Neither is familiar with the other's likes or dislikes. They haven't even seen each other in over a decade. They are strangers.
Right. And Lourdes has a brand new life there. How many people are living in the house when Enrique shows up?
I just passed that. Where is that?
And as we're looking for the number of them, who are these other people that are living there with Lourdes?
There are 8 people.
There are 8 people living in this place. Several have left their children behind. All they have is pictures. And Lourdes's boyfriend has 2 sons in Honduras. So it's crowded. And these people have all kind of collected together because they too have left children behind. And they're both different people, very different people. It says on 162, the boy she last saw when he was in kindergarten is now taller than she is. So it's not just a physical difference, but then there's also the other differences. His mother winces at the fact that he has tattoos.
Yeah.
So it's these 2 strangers that have come together, and it's not the fairy tale ending that either thought it would be. Great. Okay. So here is the actual prompt. It says Honduran migrant official Norberto Giron is quoted by Nazario as saying, "We are seeing a disintegration of the family. Keeping the family together, even if they are poor, is more important than leaving and improving their economic conditions." Do you agree or disagree with his statement? Do you believe that Enrique's life, as well as those of his family, would have been better overall if Lourdes had remained in Honduras rather than going to the United States to provide better financially for her children? Write an essay in which you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with this claim. Use evidence from the text to support your argument. So let's break this apart. Form. What are you being asked to produce from this prompt? Shouldn't be hard. The answer's right there. Are you looking at the slides? What are you producing?
Yeah, producing
Argument
an opinion.
Argument
Yeah.
essay. Yeah. Now, I don't know. I know that this semester we haven't written an argument essay yet. Have any of you written an argument essay before?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So, what you do in that is you're going to present your opinion. You're going to explain how you came to that decision using the evidence from the text that supports your position. So, that's the form. The function, what is your product going to do? So you are telling your readers whether you agree or disagree with Garon's statement, whether they should stay together or leave behind the children to send the money. You need to explain why Lourdes was right or wrong to leave her children to find work in the U.S. and use the evidence from the text to support your opinion. Now, we want to look at why this is an important topic to look at. So, if I were to ask you who is your audience in this, the answer that I typically get is the teacher. And I don't want it to be the teacher. Likewise, it's not, I mean, I know that you've probably been told, think of your audience as people your age in the same class, but reading different things. But that's not really what your audience is. Who needs to hear this story? Why is this topic important?
Well, I think this topic is important because it helps like spread information that some people may not know. Like I didn't know a lot about illegal immigration before I read this book, and I think that writing this essay could help like persuade one's opinion or just have a better understanding.
Great. And that's exactly who you want to address. And so if there's like a person you've heard say something in your mind that you could kind of, if you were to have an actual conversation, who would you be talking with? That kind of helps you to focus your attention on your message and how you want your message to be constructed. So that's why, and that's exactly what Nazario would hope for, is that for those people who don't know very much about illegal immigration, why it happens, who is involved with it, then that she's done her job. That's exactly what she has set out to do, and that's kind of what you want to do too. And you can have, Giron is right on two fronts, and so if we'll get there. Let me just review real fast by taking a raft. I like to take rafts. RAF stands for the reason, the audience, the form, and the thesis. So your reason is to persuade the target audience to do what? What do you want the target audience to respond to? There's not a lot they can do, right? But at least we want them to think about something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's persuading the target audience to think about what?
To think about how I think about it from the position.
Yes.
From their point of view.
Yes. Look at a different point of view than your own. I like that. Okay, so the audience, who's our target audience?
Someone who is interested in the topic or wants to learn more about it.
Mm-hmm. Or possibly somebody who disagrees with you.
Right.
There might be still some people out there who think the opposite thing as you, and you just want to let them know where you're coming from. So it's whoever either thinks with you or against you, maybe even a combination of both. So how will you deliver your message to the audience? We know this is going to be a what?
Argumentative.
Argument essay. Good. So what's our thesis? This is easy. It's probably the easiest question.
Well, your thesis is your argument, isn't it?
Yeah, but so what's the question you're responding to?
Would Enrique's life been better if Lourdes had remained in Honduras, or rather than going to the United States, or to provide better for financially for her children? Like, would it have been better if she stayed or not?
As a summary, yes, that's what you're responding to. But if you look at the prompt again real carefully, what is the prompt asking you?
Oh, do you agree with
Your own, right?
Yeah.
So if you agree with Giron, then you are basically saying that Enrique's life would have been better had Lourdes have stayed. If you are arguing against Giron, you are saying that Enrique's life was better, he just didn't take advantage of it. Because we know that Belky's life was better. Belky obviously benefited from it. She missed her mother, obviously, but she accepted what her mother was able to do for her and made it work for her. So it depends on which way you want to fall on this, and you can be a little bit of both. I think that, and Riley touched on this earlier, the fact that you can understand why Lourdes had to feel like she had to do it, but you can also understand why Enrique responded the way he did. It's just a tragic situation all around because Lourdes did not have the money to properly feed and clothe her children and educate them. So the gist of your argument, and this kind of comes out to be this might be one example of a claim. No matter the circumstances, Giron is correct when he says that the family needs to stay together. The emotional strain on both parent and child costs more than the lack of 3 meals a day and clothing. So that's arguing for Giron. Let's take one that argues against Giron using the same pattern. How could we do this? We're going to argue against him.
Being able to provide for the next generation after their kids, and their kids being able to provide for their kids should be their top priority, because if they wouldn't have gone, they wouldn't have been able to provide for the next generation.
That's good. I don't know, but I think that Mrs. Campbell might be having some more issues with her computer.
Oh no.
Oops, I accidentally hit the mute button.
Oh, okay.
So all that praising I did for Riley, just completely unheard. Sorry, I was just praising you like crazy, Riley. I was saying that you were the best student. No, I agree. That was a really great way of stating what you had to say. So nice job. Okay, now the evidence. So I want to show you again. I'm always going to remind you of how to put the evidence in, how to work it in, kind of kneading it together with the rest of the information. So this is what I call a chunk, and the chunk is basically the claim with at least 2 pieces of evidence, and then what we call analysis, or the backing that kind of ties it together. So look how this is done. After Lourdes has been gone for 2 years, she's able to send the children, quote, clothes, shoes, toy cars, a RoboCop doll, and a television. Notice also how that is cited. So you have her last name and then the page number. Now, the blue part is the part that ties this to the argument I'm trying to make. Working in the United States allows Lourdes to send financial support to her children, but Enrique's grandmother continues to tell him his mother will be home soon. Now, the reason there's no page number there is because it's repeated an awful lot. So we could give, we'd have, I don't know how many page numbers, but we can verify that she continually says to say that. So that doesn't necessarily have to be cited at that point. Now, the green part again is the analysis that ties it together. However, she doesn't come home, and that only makes Enrique angrier. Here's a second chunk that does the same thing. It's going to further support why this may not be a good idea. Lourdes' motivation to leave Tegucigalpa was to give a better life to her children. When Enrique finally reaches her 11 years later, he confesses to her how he sold the items she sent to him to buy glue to get high. She realizes her mistake. She cries and then, quote, she feels too guilty to go on. And that was on page 163. Notice how much of this is quoted. Not very much, huh? What I've done is I've kind of summarized what's happening right before she says that point, and it's just that part that she feels too guilty to go on that's the really strong point of that quote. So I don't need to give like 4 or 5 sentences in order to get that evidence in there. Then we put that backing back in there. Enrique convinces her that he did not need the clothes and the shoes and the gifts. He needed her. So what you do is you take those 2 chunks and you actually put them together. You do need to add a little bit with the claim and then just kind of letting it flow. So here's what the actual body paragraph might look like. Lourdes shows us the bond between parent and child is priceless, and no matter how poor a family may be, they should stay together. Now we have our 2 chunks that we just looked at. On the bottom, now we're going to tie it together with Enrique convinces her that he did not need the clothes. He needed her. Oh, that's the part I added. And that was much greater than his need for things. So that is called a 2-chunk paragraph. What you want to do for the organization of it is to have at least 2 of those. So this outline is offered as a suggestion. You do not have to stick to it. If this is constraining for you, if you would prefer to get a little bit more creative with it, please do so. But what you want is the introduction with a hook and a claim. And again, you're going back to why this is an important issue. Then you have your 2 body paragraphs with 2 chunks, reason 1, reason 2. Now this number 4, what is the possible solution to the family immigration dilemma? I'm not expecting you to solve the problem. However, if you do, I will nominate you for the Nobel Peace Prize because everybody's trying to solve it. But really, what is it we need to do? Even if it's just to understand something, what do we need to understand? What can we do about it? What would be some possible things you could discuss here?
You could talk about ways that you could still stay with your family in Mexico or from wherever you are. Or you can talk about ways you can bring them with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and which do you, because I would think, yes, it's how do we get families to feel like they don't need to leave? I'm wondering, since Enrique's parents were separated, how much of it was because Lourdes was kind of raising him on his own, the two of them on their own, did not have support from the father. Um, so is it because that they were split up, or because they truly didn't have the money to support the children?
I think it might have been a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think with, at least from what I understand, from when I went um and visited Mexico when I over the summer because I went with my father.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from what I understood of the way I saw it work, it seemed like the men were doing a lot of work
Right.
and the women were doing more of trinket selling and the men were doing more of um, selling of items like such as food and um, items that such as bags, blankets, stuff
Mm-hmm.
that commonly bought.
Right.
I feel like the men sells that kind of stuff more than the women, so the women gets the smaller stuff to sell, like the little pocket stuff.
Right. And they're
And
probably the men who are selling. Did you get the impression that the men who were selling things were married to the women selling the things, or are we talking about different families here?
I'm talking about more different families, like
Yeah.
more different groups.
Yeah, the women are going to do most of the caretaking at home, especially in that culture. Now remember, this was Honduras and not Mexico. And what's
Mhm.
different about Honduras is the kind of government that is down there. What is how does Nazario explain how Honduras is different than, say Mexico?
Um,
If you think about what is Honduras really famous for?
uh, I don't know.
That's a good thing. I don't want you involved in them. They they're they are run by some pretty nasty drug cartels.
Yeah.
Honduras is a great place to because first of all you can get coffee beans there, good coffee beans, and where there's coffee, there's caffeine, and where there's caffeine, there's cocaine. And so there's a lot of drugs running in and out of Honduras, and the drug cartels are the ones who actually control everything down there through violence and abuse. So that's part of the reason why Lourdes felt so, there wouldn't have been a way for her to get in there. And she knew that that kind of lifestyle was going to be difficult if they grew up poor and they needed to get out of at least the neighborhood they were in. So that's part of this. We need to figure out how can we get supplies down there past the cartels. I don't think there's an answer beyond that, but I hope among you there is one. Okay, so and of course don't forget your conclusion in that essay. Okay, so here are the dates. And I did, Mr. Short, these are the ones that I have updated because we did postpone. I know some people in my class needed extra time to read Enrique's journey. So this is where I've set them to. I don't know if you're going to want to do this as well, but I have the first draft due Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. and then the peer reviews going out the next minute after. This is actually wrong. It's Tuesday what is November? So it's Tuesday, November 5th, and it's Wednesday, November 6th that I know, go away, little assistant. Excuse me for a second here when I beat this thing up. So it's Wednesday, November 6th at 12 a.m. is when the peer reviews go out. Remember, the peer reviews don't go out until 12 because the essays aren't due until November 5th. So those of you who are early birds, you're going to have to be patient. If you get that first draft done, just be patient. And by that point, the fourth module should be open. You are welcome to start the fourth module early while you're waiting for feedback on your first drafts. So, Mr. Short, are you okay with these dates, or do you plan on?
Oh no, those are great. Yeah,
Okay.
I did update my dates, but I forgot to change the peer review
Okay.
automation, so I'll do that.
All righty. The peer reviews this time are some questions. What you do is you get a Google Doc, and you will have these questions that you can copy and paste into them. And what you're trying to do is look at the essay for the other person and make sure that they have met the goals that we've set. So, what is the rhetorical purpose or function? So, we've all discussed what that is. You need to verify that they've got it. So, did they indeed attempt to persuade their audience on a point of view? And who did they really target in that essay? Do you feel as if they've targeted a certain group of people, or is it just kind of in general? What types of evidence and appeals does the audience value most highly? So, is it going to be ethos, where it's the expertise? So, maybe they've gone through and have used a lot of the information that Nazario researched when it comes to illegal immigration. Or pathos, are they using a lot of pathos in the type of evidence that they use, or logos, or a balance of each? If we go back to, the sample paragraph, how would you classify the evidence in this paragraph? So what are you thinking here? Ethos, pathos, or logos? Expertise, facts, or emotional appeals?
I think it's ethos.
Ethos, you said?
Yes,
Why ethos?
because the end of this paragraph, the evidence says she feels too guilty to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And even the quote before that, where it says "be home soon," that's not really a quote, but it's still trying to put in like more emotion than I guess you would like factual evidence, not necessarily like facts, because
So then what you're saying is that it's pathos because it's emotional, right?
Oh, right. Sorry. Did
That's
I mix
okay.
that up?
No, and this is what it is difficult, and it's why in the sophomore year we start introducing it, because you do really need to know by the time you're a junior the difference between.
Yeah.
So we're just practicing right now. Here's how I remember it. So logos, logic, easy enough, right? Now the ethos, I think of ethos, expertise, both starting with
Right.
E.
Sorry, I totally mixed those both
That's
up.
okay. But I want to make sure that I share this too. So the pathos, oh, that's pathetic. That's pathos. So it's emotional. In fact, I
Right.
have to pass this on because Mr. Short, did you ever get to meet Dr. Michael Flockman from Cal State Bakersfield?
Oh yeah, actually, I knew him kind of well. He actually came and sat in on a class of mine at the high school I taught at, and
Awesome.
yeah, so he came and gave a couple of presentations. One of the things he loved talking about was Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in time, he gave a presentation on how to tell which character is controlling the scene in Shakespeare.
Ooh. Okay, we have got to get together because that one I didn't get.
Okay.
I got a lot from him, and one of the things I got from him was the definition of pathos. And I don't know if you ever heard this, Mr. Short, but his definition of pathos was think of dropping a brick on a kitten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Did you
great.
hear that one?
No, but
You never
when
heard
I
that from
when I think of pathos in terms of literature, the definition is pity. But in terms of rhetoric, it's a little different,
Right. Yeah. And it's still trying to appeal to that emotional side of people. This is the very reason why nobody wants to watch ASPCA commercials. So okay, so that's the kind of thing that you're looking at is how did they try to reach the audience? Was it through kind of logic, or was it through emotion, or was it through fact-based expertise? How does the writer establish his or her own authority to address this issue? So there's really only one answer to this one. As the writers of this essay, what makes you the best experts on this particular topic? This refers to everybody in the class. How do we know you're an expert on this topic? You all had to do the same thing. What was it?
Read the book.
Read the book. So I'm sure none of you ever fake read your way through a book. You've never done that, but maybe some people have. I know I have, and that's okay. It's hard when it comes to choosing books for students to read that we can read together as a group. I know I'm not going to be able to reach everybody and say, "Hey, you're really going to love this book." But there are books that we do want to talk about collectively, and so as long as you've gone through, and if you'll notice, we only looked at the first chapter and the 8th chapter, and then picked up a little bit of information here and there from other parts. So it's how deeply have you gone into the book, and how many pieces of evidence have you been able to find? And so that's how the person is going to establish his authority. Have they used enough convincing evidence to be able to speak on this subject? And then what are the most important factors contributing to either the success or the failure of the argument? Did they convince you? So if you can make a suggestion, such as, can you explain this a little bit more without emotion, it might make it more convincing. And then the most relevant feedback. Now, here's what relevant feedback is. Somebody has a C paper and they really want an A paper. What are they going to do to make it the A paper? That's relevant feedback. This is not relevant feedback. I really liked how you worded this in it, and you did a really nice job, and I really liked your essay. Good job. That's not relevant. That doesn't tell the writer anything except you're just trying to be nice. What we're doing here is we're helping each other to bring out more of the argument. Your practice audience is what you are, and so you want to let them practice on you. And so if they're not convincing, you ask, can you add more information about this or that? So that's what you're looking at in those questions. Any questions about the peer review? Because these are a little bit, the questions themselves are kind of like up there. And so I want to make sure that you understand what they're asking. And of course, you can always email either one of us about, I still don't get that question, and we can help you with that. Okay, so I wanted to kind of reintroduce this because we did get some new people with us, and there are some people still kind of confused on how to do this. So as I told you back here, so you're going to have a Google Doc for 3.5.5. What you have to do is go take the sheet and share it, and then that little menu pops up. Now you can do either one. You can do this shareable link or you can do this copy link. This is set at the default that anybody in the Kern High School District can view it if they have the link. And so that's the one you want. And it's automatically this one. So if you click on the green button, it automatically copies it to the clipboard. It will do the same thing here with copy link. And then you press done. Now you have that URL. You go back to the person's essay in SpeedGrader. So that's actually how you get it. You see it in SpeedGrader. And so where it says add a comment, you just paste that URL right there. And then when you go back to look for it, you look at my feedback or Mr. Short's feedback if you're in his class, and then you copy the comment or the URL that's in the comments, you paste it in a new tab, and that will bring up the other person's paper so that you can see how well you did with them. So are there any questions about what you need to do?
No.
Okay. Mr. Short, is there anything you need to add?
No. You've covered everything wonderfully. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and I look forward to reading your essays. So have a wonderful, safe Halloween tonight, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.